That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, I was unaware that I haven't been talking about this lately, but we've had a free Discord chat for over a year now. I think that we were actually one of the first people on YouTube to even have a Discord chat, at least for fantasy football in particular. But if y'all want to join, it's completely free. I don't know why I don't talk about this more often. There are a couple thousand people in there talking Dynasty football, talking fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, redraft fantasy football. You can find a channel for really whatever sport you want to discuss. Now, that's going to be in the description of the video. Maybe I'll remember to leave the link in the comments section as well. But regardless, if you can't find it for whatever reason, maybe you're watching this on a TV instead of your phone where you can easily pull up the description, then just shoot me a DM on Twitter, shoot me a DM on Instagram, wherever it is, and say, hey Mason, can I get a link to the Discord chat? And I promise you if I read that DM, you'll be getting that link. But yeah, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be taking a suggestion, taking a request from Patreon, actually the Patreon side of that Discord chat, because it's kind of split in two. But what they're asking is they want to see some deep dive wide receivers. Now, this was a question that was asked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I apologize for just now making this video. I believe Baskin asked it on the Patreon chat. But we've had a ton of stuff to talk about. I mean, you have the Deshaun Watson stuff. I always like talking about my own Dynasty trades, and we have those rookie mock drafts happening all the time. So we're just not getting to it, but it doesn't matter because not a lot has changed with the players we're going to be talking about. And of course, before we talk about these players, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Helps us out a ton. And let's get into it. And our first player we're going to talk about, I want to say if he was in a better situation, I would be all in. We have to be a little bit hesitant here just because the situation is so bad. It's going to be Jalen Hurts, not Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, a wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. And a quick side note, guys, these are going to be deep dive wide receivers. If you want to be hearing about Marquise Brown, you want to be hearing about DK Metcalf, guys that you already know their names, then this isn't the video for you. We're going to be going deep. And our first player here is going to be Jalen Hurts. I'm sure the majority of y'all know who Jalen Hurts is. He is an absolute monster. He came out in that 2019 NFL draft class. And not a lot of people will believe this, but he was actually the 3rd pick in the 3rd round in that 2019 NFL draft. So he was a top 100 NFL draft selection. And what's noticeable about this is you tend to see these wide receivers with elite level speed that can stretch the field and increase the overall efficiency of their offense. They go at the beginning of the NFL draft consistently. I mean, you look at a player like KJ Hamler last year going in the 2nd round, and you can put that draft capital at a little bit of a discount because we understand that, yes, they may be able to help their team where that investment makes sense, but the volume isn't going to be there because they don't profile to be that kind of wide receiver. So even if it's a good NFL draft pick by that team, it doesn't mean a lot for our fantasy football rosters where, no, Jalen Hurts profiles to be the wide receiver that is getting touches all over the football field, is getting a ton of volume. He is 6'5", 226 pounds. And really, we can't talk about anything he's done in the NFL up to this point. He's going into year 3, and he has yet to play a single regular season game. And that's because in the preseason in 2019, he suffered a back stress fracture that sidelined him all year. And then in 2020, during training camps, I mean, when I was so excited about Jalen Hurts, I thought that we were going to be viewing him as a player that could surprisingly be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. He ends up tearing his ACL, and we do not get to see anything. The only NFL action we have ever seen from Jalen Hurts was him going in the 2019 preseason, and he had one game where he completely popped off. I mean, he looked like the man his rookie year in that one preseason game. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if memory serves correct, he went over 100 yards, he had some big plays, and he looked dynamic while doing so. So instead of talking about what he hasn't done in the NFL because he hasn't had the shot, instead, let's talk about what he was coming out of college. Now, if you look up Jalen Hurts, you're going to be a little bit surprised that he did not take the traditional route at all. He was like a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. He ends up going to Tennessee. He's playing the running back position. It is a good running back. He's splitting a backfield with Alvin Kamara, one of the best playmakers in the NFL. And then what you end up seeing is probably Jalen Hurts' agent getting in his ear going, hey man, just FYI, you're 6'5", 226 pounds. The NFL isn't going to love you as a running back. You're not going to get paid as a running back. You're not going to get the draft capital. You probably should switch over to the wide receiver position. So obviously he wanted to play wide receiver to go along with this. He was having problems with the coaching staff in Tennessee. So he ends up transferring to Baylor. I believe he didn't even have to sit out a year. If you just look at the year-by-year production, I have no idea how he got a waiver where he didn't have to sit out a year for transferring. But no, he transfers over to Baylor. He plays a little bit of that slot wide receiver role, and he's impressive in the action that he gets. Comes into the NFL as a very raw player, goes to the 49ers, and I like this situation because back in 2019, it looked like Jalen Hurts had a clear path to go and eventually be the wide receiver 2 on this team, where now that path doesn't exactly exist because we look at the depth chart for this team. They have Ayuk as their number 1 wide receiver. They have Deebo Samuel as their number 2. They have George Kittle, who in all reality is probably going to be the number 1 target leader on this team. And then Jalen Hurts sliding in at number 4. So of course, this is why he is a deep dynasty stash, a deep target, because all we're betting on here is the talent. We're going, hopefully something changes with his situation that allows him to see the field and allows him to display that talent that we believe he has. Because if he does get that opportunity, I think that he can succeed. And it's going to take a Deebo Samuel injury. It's going to take a Brandon Ayuk injury. But if it happens, I believe in Jalen Hurts. And I don't want anybody coming out here talking about him being injury prone because his 2019 back stress fracture and his 2020 ACL tear, 2 completely separate injuries, just random chance that he misses these 2 first seasons. So I'm kind of all in on picking up Jalen Hurts at the back end of our rosters. Okay, so now our next player is going to be someone in Baltimore. It's going to be Miles Boykin. Came out in that same 2019 NFL draft class. Another monstrous wide receiver, 6'4", 220 pounds. With Miles Boykin, though, he is an elite level athlete. I mean, he ran a 4.42 40-yard dash, and he had extremely impressive measurables in every other category at the combine. And this ended up making him a 3rd-round draft pick by the Baltimore Ravens. And you can make the argument here that maybe he profiles a little bit more to be a wide receiver that's not going to see the raw volume. Maybe they want him to be that dynamic player that can stretch the field. But no, just because his 40-yard dash time indicates that he has that capability, I don't think that's what this team wants, because you look at the investment that they made into Hollywood Brown in that same NFL draft, and you go, okay, Hollywood Brown is clearly their field stretcher. He's clearly the guy that's going to be creating space underneath. And the other wide receivers that are going to be in Baltimore this year are going to be Sammy Watkins, Devin Duvernay, and Miles Boykin. So that wide receiver 2 role is up for the taking. Now, y'all know I love my man Sammy. We got the jersey up. But still, I think we can safely say, based on what Sammy Watkins did with Patrick Mahomes, that it's no guarantee that Sammy Watkins is going to come in and be the immediate wide receiver 2, despite him getting that massive contract. And here with Miles Boykin, we can look at what he's done in the NFL so far, and it's very underwhelming. I mean, he averaged a target and a half in 2019, a little bit less than 1 receptions a game in 2019 as well, a little over 12 yards a game. And then in 2020, just over 2 targets a game, just over 1 reception, and 16.6 yards. So really no production. Willie Snead is gone, though, and we're looking at Miles Boykin going, you know what? He's only 24 years old. He has the opportunity to possibly be the number 2 wide receiver on the Baltimore Ravens. And no, you don't want the number 2 wide receiver on an offense that is not going to be throwing the ball a lot. But the number 1 wide receiver on the field, Hollywood Brown, is the type of player that we always talk about. You want the wide receiver opposite of those elite speed guys, the guys that aren't going to command a ton of volume, guys like Henry Ruggs, Hollywood Brown. It's a very boring and very simple take, but it's something that we have to understand in fantasy. Is that Hollywood Brown, yeah, he can be the wide receiver 1 on the team, but he's not going to be seeing a 25% team target share. He's going to be out there, so the wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 3, the tight end, they have space to operate underneath. So if Miles Boykin ends up winning that wide receiver 2 role, and we see the targets between Boykin and Hollywood Brown be completely split, and Boykin has the frame to be an end zone threat, I think we can look at this and we can go, hey, maybe Miles Boykin has the upside to be a wide receiver 3. And right now, where you can get him just at the very, very, very end of Dynasty startup drafts, that could be a decent bargain. All right, so let's stick it in Baltimore just because this is a team that I'm kind of liking to target right now because they have targets available. It's going to be Devin Duvernay. And yes, I will say I'm completely biased here with Devin Duvernay. Y'all know that I've said this so many times before, but obviously I'm graduating from UT this semester, as pretty much everybody knows. And Devin Duvernay graduated from the University of Texas. I used to see him at the Rec consistently. No, I I was always too scared to go up there and ask him for an interview with the Fantasy Flock just because I'm a little chicken. But regardless, here with Devin Duvernay, love the talent coming out of Texas. 5'11", 200 pounds, literally a track star. I mean, he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. He's currently 23 years old. And the Baltimore Ravens spent a third-round NFL draft pick on Devin Duvernay last offseason. So there's by no means any signs to point that Devin Duvernay is not a part of this team's future going forward. And in his rookie year, yeah, it was disappointing, but still 1.6 targets a game, 1.2 receptions, 12 yards. Simply here with Baltimore, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see that wide receiver 2 position is available. You can go out there and capture it if you're one of these wide receivers. So regardless of if you're making your bet on Miles Boykin, Sammy Watkins, Devin Duvernay, I think maybe if you get that bet correct, you can see some value in those leagues that have a lot of flex spots. Okay, so now let's go over to a wide receiver that I know as soon as I say the name, people are going to turn off the video because it's just getting so boring, but y'all asked for deep targets, and that's what I'm giving. Let's talk about Kelvin Harmon for the Washington football team. And here, I know if y'all been watching the channel for a very long time now, Kelvin Harmon in that 2019 NFL draft class, I absolutely hated. He got literally no NFL draft capital. He went at the very end of the 6th round. Another name that a lot of people in the Dynasty community liked. A lot of people thought he was going to go in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. Ends up falling, similar to Equinemius St. Brown in a few years before this. But Kelvin Harmon, the reason he fell is he provides absolutely no special teams upside. He also provides absolutely no upside with his speed on the field. So we know that if you don't provide either one of those two things for an NFL franchise, your value to that franchise is a lot lower than someone that can return kicks, someone that can go out there and maybe doesn't profile to be someone seeing 8 targets a game, but if they have that speed and they have to draw the safety attention, then they can make space underneath for the other wide receivers and possibly the running backs to move. But anyway, with Kelvin Harmon, no, he doesn't provide that at all for the Washington football offense. But great thing for him is he's playing with 2 wide receivers that have that elite speed in Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, both guys that are definitely going to be getting the defensive attention, guys that are going to be taking the safeties away. And with Kelvin Harmon, if he slides into being that wide receiver 3 this year, I think he'll have some opportunity. I mean, his rookie year in 2019, he averaged a little bit less than 2 receptions a game, a little bit more than 20 yards a game. 2020 suffered an ACL tear before the season even started, so he didn't have his chance. But right now, you pull up this depth chart, and it's Terry McLaurin 1, Curtis Samuel 2. We've already talked about Curtis Samuel not being the wide receiver that's going to draw that 20% team target share. So maybe Kelvin Harmon has some space to operate going into year 3. Just a name to possibly pick up off the waiver wire at this point. Okay, so probably the biggest name that we're going to talk about on this list is going to end up being Preston Williams. And here with Preston Williams, I know that there are people excited about him. If you approach the Preston Williams owner in your Dynasty League, you're probably going to get told to F off just because guys who own Preston Williams love Preston Williams. But here is a situation where it's going to be completely dependent on what happens in the NFL draft. Because going into 2021, this team already has Devontae Parker as their ex-wide receiver, Will Fuller playing that field stretching type role. Preston Williams is currently slotted in to be the wide receiver 3 on this depth chart. But we understand here with Preston Williams that A, the team has no investment into him at all. He was an undrafted free agent because of some off-the-field concerns. And B, this team has so many draft picks this year. They have so many draft picks next year. So you're looking at any player that doesn't have the team investment in Miami, just say, like they're starting running back in Myles Gaskin, or saying they're wide receiver 3 in Preston Williams. And you can understand, hey, both of these guys can lose their jobs very soon, and it's clear why. But still with Preston Williams, it's going to be hard to get over the fact that his his rookie season, he went and averaged 4 receptions a game, 53 yards. And yes, this was only halfway through the year, so not a super large sample, but that was because he suffered a foot sprain in about week 9. He ends up taking a step back in 2020, down to 2.5 receptions a game and 36 yards. But still, if you can get him at the end of your roster, maybe you're playing in a shallower type format, maybe you're playing in a league that the start of draft is just now happening, so that Preston Williams owner doesn't already have him on the team, this could be someone you look to target. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. As always, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.